Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And for people that don't, for the listeners that are, well, this is a very revolutionary platform. For the non-revolutionary listeners that don't know about Sawant, um, she was in the city council for Seattle, and you guys were the first to do the 15 um with minimum wage
You're
Yeah,
talking about, yeah, the minimum wage, yeah.
region.
yeah.
Yeah.
Kshama, she was elected as a socialist, as the first socialist in almost 100 years
Yeah.
to the Seattle City Council back in 2013. She led the movement for the highest minimum wage in the country, which at that time was the first $15 minimum wage in any major city back in 2014. But because we fought for inflation adjustments and we fought against big business and the Democratic Party that wanted to take those inflation adjustments out of that law, we fought for those, and so now the minimum wage in Seattle is $20.76 for all workers in
Wow.
Seattle.
Wow. Okay, so that even went higher than
But isn't the
what I
cost
read
of
at first.
living in Seattle kind of high, right? You're still fighting for it to go even higher than that, right?
Absolutely, and it's high everywhere. I
Yeah.
mean, it is criminal the fact that we still have a $7.25 minimum wage
Yeah.
anywhere in this country. Even $15, people can't survive on that. That's exactly why we fought for those inflation adjustments. And this is, Alex said something um, in the intro about, how do we respond to the huge crisis that we have? And we have the Holocaust of the 21st century happening in Gaza right now. We have mass deportations. We have crippling healthcare costs of people, and we need to fight back. And we don't need to go down fighting because we see what victory looks like. We see that it's possible, and so there is the possibility to win huge victories and to change the system entirely. But it's going to require working people getting organized. It's going to require a movement. We've seen it with the fight for the minimum wage in Seattle, for the Amazon tax, for renters' rights. We need to build that movement nationally and internationally to end the genocide, to stop the deportations, to fight for free healthcare by taxing the rich, to fight for rent control. That's exactly what Kshama's independent campaign for Congress is about, is building that movement nationally.
Yeah, I'd like to mention also that Comrade Chris Richards should be on momentarily. But I always like to counter the narrative, the bourgeois narrative that in the United States you have to be a Democrat or Republican to get in any you know official office. And
Right.
whenever they say that, I use Kshama Sawant's example that she was in city council for 10 years, and now she's
Yep.
running for Congress. So movement building is important, but electoralism has its space as well. For example, Venezuela for a long time was a two-party system. Then you had the
Yep.
Chavista movement into the late 90s. As I mentioned in my statement, I witnessed the electoral process firsthand. I went down to Venezuela 4 years ago for their regional elections. So, the left in that country got their act together. They had been divided for a long time. They had been dominated by the oligarchic two principal parties, conservatives and liberals. The socialists weren't given a voice. But with the Chavista movement, that all changed. And I say, why can't that be done here? Well, they're a good example.
And it is crucial that we point to these examples of, we have such uh, a wealth of examples.
Hopefully, Comrade Dust will be back momentarily. I know he's with his son there, but go ahead, Comrade.
I was just going to say, we have seen over and over the misleaders in the Democratic Party, the misleaders in the union leadership and the NGO leadership fail over and over, betray working people over and over. That's what people see every day. That's why we see this demoralization among some people, because we've seen these sellouts. And so it's crucial, actually, that we point to the example of Kshama in Seattle, someone who ran as an independent, who built movements of working people, who didn't sell out to the Democratic Party or big business or the corporate landlords, but built movements against them and won real concrete victories. I mean, billions of dollars. That's what
Yeah.
this represents, this highest minimum wage in the country, as well as the Amazon tax, which raises hundreds of millions of dollars every year to go to affordable housing. That's money into the pockets of working people. These renters'
Yeah.
rights, just for example, these are things that people might not know about, but it used to be the case that corporate landlords in Seattle would charge people. We heard stories of people getting charged $75 a day if they were late on their rent. So if you're late on rent 2 weeks, you owe over $1,000 in late fees on top of your rent. We capped that at $10 a month. So that is hundreds or thousands of dollars of money going into working people's pockets from the corporate landlords, from big business. That's what's possible when you have an independent who actually stands with working and oppressed people instead of big business and this careerist trend and these careers that we see like AOC and Bernie Sanders who aren't fighting back. They're not standing up.
Look how AOC just voted, right? I mean, that says it all.
Yeah, I mean, $500 million that she could have voted to stop that spending, stop that military funding going to fund this genocide. That we have to be clear. That is a pro-genocide vote. That is AOC voting for genocide, and we have to be very clear about that. That is a red line. And you cannot call yourself a socialist. You cannot call yourself a representative of working people if you're voting for genocide.
And by the way, why are you going to fund Iron Dome when it doesn't work? We know it doesn't work because of Iran's retaliatory strikes into Israel, right?
And we have to break the narrative too that Iron Dome or Arrow or David's Sling are defensive systems. These are military weapons that Israel uses to carry out genocide, to carry out war in the region.
It facilitates the genocide.
Right.
Its very existence does that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to mention
the idea that this is a defensive weapon.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention like the importance of what you're saying about just how there are successful socialist candidates that have made it in some form of office all over the country as well too. And we also have to mention that the Democrats make it very, very hard for any third party candidate to run in any form of office.
I mean, actually, because Comrade Smith, if you prefer, the Green Party, right? Because obviously, the Democrats have sabotaged the Green Party in North Carolina. Dust can talk to that. He lives in North Carolina.
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah. And we interviewed Matthew Hull, who was a victim.
This is my question, though. Has there been any type of alliance between the Greens and the Socialists, the Revolutionary Workers that Comrade Sawant's with now? Is there any type of alliance going on in Seattle with them?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is how we've won victories. Any of these victories, whether it's renters' rights or the Amazon tax or the highest minimum wage, we won it by building movements of working people. And I think we have to, we shouldn't counterpose the idea of running in elections and building social movements because these things have to be connected. This is where we've seen, I think, the failure of even genuine people who run for office is that they don't then use that platform to build movements, to call for mass protests, to call for civil disobedience, to call for strike action, to organize regular working people towards a clear fighting demand, like free healthcare for all by taxing the rich, like rent control, like free mass transit. Putting forward these clear demands that speak to the needs of working people, organizing that movement against the rich, against both of their parties, and using the power of mass movements connected with that office to win those victories. That's how we did it, by combining this, not by separating out the idea of electoralism from social movements, but bringing those together and building the movement as a whole to win these victories.
Yeah, but the people distinguish between the two usually because they see politicians, especially careerists. Some of them call themselves leftists, but they're not by any means revolutionaries, and they only show up to the community when it's time for an electoral race. If you're building a movement that's consistent with activists and revolutionaries, then they won't just show up when they want to get elected. You know what I mean? So that's what they distinguish it. They're like, okay, well, this is just electoralism. That's the only time they show up. They're being opportunist. But the ones that are sincere, that really care, the revolutionaries, they'll back candidates, but at the same time, there'll be a consistent movement throughout the year.
Yeah, and the fact is, we are not going to win victories without those movements. One person in office just trying to make deals behind closed doors, that is a recipe for getting sucked into the Democratic Party, for selling out working people. And in order to fight, in order to win anything, you need the power of mass movements. This is about, all of these victories, it's about what is the balance of forces? What is the strength of big business and the Democratic Party fighting against these demands? And what is the strength of working people, of union members and socialists and regular working people packing City Hall, marching, rallying, putting mass pressure and threatening the careers and the stability of the system of the Democrats and the Republicans, and forcing that change and winning those victories. That is how you do it. And just, I mean, for example, we saw a huge movement out in New York with Zoran Mamdani getting elected, defeating, or rather winning the primary, defeating Andrew Cuomo, all of the millions of dollars that came from Michael Bloomberg and all these billionaires, big business.
You think they could pick somebody better than Cuomo, who's been totally disgraced?
Right.
This is the Democrats. I don't get it.
Oh, it's rotten. But these people get into office. I mean, Kshama, the person that she's running against is Adam Smith. I don't know if you have.
I don't know much about politics in Washington State. No.
So Adam Smith is a total warmonger. He's one of the biggest warmongers in Congress.
Zionist?
Yeah, he's a Zionist, and he's a Democrat. Yeah. He was the head of the House Armed Services Committee under Joe Biden. So he personally approved all of the tens of billions of dollars that went to fund that genocide. He voted for the Iraq War. He voted to establish ICE in 2002. He gets money from Palantir. He gets money from right-wing billionaires like Joe Lonsdale, who donated $1 million to Trump, like Alexander Karp, the CEO of Palantir, that just donated $1 million to Trump's super PAC. His number one donor last year was AIPAC, the pro-genocide Zionist organization that gave him over $300,000 to fund his campaign. That's who he's funded by. That's who he represents. And so that's what we're up against. And so when you look at something like Zoran Mamdani's victory, I mean, working people were able to defeat Cuomo because of that movement. Adam Smith is not going to be defeated on his own. The Democratic Party is not going to be defeated.
Well, he did use different methods than Comrade Sawant is using, because he did join the Democratic Party.
And that's exactly what I was going to get to. The question is, he ran on these demands, $30 an hour, free mass transit, city-owned grocery stores. But it's a different question of running on those demands. That's crucial. But how do you win that? And that's what we've shown in Seattle. That's what Kshama has shown over and over again, is that building those movements is crucial. And otherwise, there will be a selling out of working people. And so, I mean, just to give an example of how Mamdani could have already used this platform to build those movements. The week after he won this primary, where he had 50,000 people who signed up to volunteer, he had 20,000 donors. And the week after he won that primary, the New York Rent Control Board voted to increase rents in New York by 3%. He's running on a rent freeze. And so, we need to use those platforms, socialists, and this is how Kshama has used her platforms, is he should have called for all those 50,000 volunteers to pack that rent control board, to organize a mass rally outside of it demanding a rent freeze, and to fight to stop that. That's how socialists should use their campaigns. That's how representatives of working people should use their campaigns to actually win these victories.
And what did he do instead? I haven't been following it closely. He didn't do anything?
Unfortunately, I think he's started to walk back some of his more fighting rhetoric. So after he won the election, he started talking about how he's going to be a mayor for all of New York, and he's going to business leaders that actually something like $30 an hour is in their interests. Something like a tax on big business is.
I see him as a progressive, and you can have some allies that are progressive, but he's not a real socialist. So when they were attacking him as a socialist, I said, I wish he was one.
Right. And unfortunately, too many, union leaders and even movement leaders, who are active in the movement, but are in the leadership of these various organizations, they fail to talk about this stuff. They fail to talk about the way that AOC is sold out, and they carry water for those progressive Democrats. But we are never going to convince the Democratic Party. We're never going to convince big business to give us a $30 minimum wage.
What's the insanity of bipartisanism? This is the insanity of bipartisanism. A crazy nut job named MTG is now officially to the left of AOC when it comes to Palestine. That's how crazy it is.
Yeah, and we should be clear about who Marjorie Taylor Greene is. I mean, she is deeply reactionary. She is no friend of working people. But it is deeply cynical for AOC to use that as an excuse for voting for genocide. This is the excuse that she said that I wouldn't vote for that amendment because Marjorie Taylor Greene sponsored it. And yet she feels comfortable voting with Richie Torres and Adam Smith and all of these right-wing Republicans who voted against that amendment as well, Zionist Democrats who voted for that. You feel comfortable voting for them, but you aren't going to vote to cut $500 million of aid from Israel, from this military spending of tens of billions of dollars that the U.S. has sent. No, I mean, it's totally unacceptable. It is a complete sellout. It's a pro-genocide vote. we have to reject it, and then put forward, explain to people and tell people about the kind of movement that that Kshama has built, the victories that she's won,
Right.
counterexample to that kind of misleadership.
And I have to say,
question
we
for our
got,
guest, but go ahead, say what you want to say.
yeah, we got about one minute left in the segment. I wanted to mention also that when it comes to Ocasio-Cortez, Sabi Sabes said something that was very, very important when I interviewed her. She said that Ocasio-Cortez really is not a part of the working class. She was part of a startup and has entrepreneur endeavors, and her partner is also very wealthy as well too. So it was just mostly the
really
rules are the whole part of it.
She was
Right.
co-owner of that bar. So that working class bartender was all false.
But there will also be working people who have careerist ambitions who sell out as well. And we see this actually with, Eric Adams is talking about this, as how, he grew up as some poor working class kid, but look what he's done. I mean, he's totally attacked working people. He's called the cops on anti-genocide protesters. So, we need to be looking at, not so much, I think, is this person working class or are they not? That's important, but also what is the strategy that they're using? How are they using their positions? How are they fighting against big business and the Democrats and the Republicans to win these demands? And that's, I know we have limited time left, but one thing to demonstrate the real difference is that Kshama, alongside of her independent campaign, which, by the way, she has pledged in all of her campaigns to take only the average worker's wage when she's elected to office, donating the rest of it to social movements, to union strike funds, to organizing drives. But alongside of her congressional campaign,
I admire that.
Yeah, and that should be the standard for any union leader, any elected official should do that. We can't have these officials getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're completely out of touch with the needs of working people. Right. But beyond that, alongside of her congressional campaign, Kshama's leading a ballot initiative in Seattle to tax the rich $5 billion a year, raise the Amazon tax that we won back in 2020, raise that by $5 billion a year, tax business to fund free healthcare for every single person in Seattle as a launch pad to win free healthcare nationally. So she's actually, fighting concretely for victories in Seattle at the same time that she's running this congressional campaign. We have now over 1,500 donors to this campaign from all 50 states and Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. Everybody watching this should go donate, whether you can donate $1,000 or $5 or $1, whatever you can give. We need every single person nationally to chip into this campaign, because that's the kind of
make sure I'll put the link in the bio.
National campaign to elect an independent socialist to office who's fighting for these things like ending U.S. military aid.
By the way, Chris Smalls, is he still being held? Because you mentioned Amazon. He's the head of the Amazon union. Is he still being held by the Zionists? He was on that latest flotilla.
I think so. I haven't seen the latest reporting, but that's another good point. We have to connect this to the labor movement. We need Amazon workers and Boeing workers and workers internationally to build this movement. It's really inspiring to see workers out in Turkey and Greece and France who have refused to load weapons onto ships that are headed to the Israeli state to fund the genocide or to supply the genocide. And they've refused to load those weapons. We need that kind of strike action, that kind of workplace action everywhere, of workers refusing to make these weapons.
Was it the Port of Oakland at one point refused to send weapons to Israel during the genocide, right?
Yeah, I think it was the longshore workers there.
Yeah,
but it needs to be much more coordinated.
Yeah.
We need mass movements to connect up with that as well. We should have mass protests anywhere we see that there's weapons being shipped to Israel. We should have workers taking action and then connecting that to mass movements, mass rallies in the streets to fight back and pointing towards the need for a new working class party, for working class representatives, for working class organization, including strong fighting unions with fighting leadership, which unfortunately we don't have. Many of these union leaders are donating to and endorsing politicians like Adam Smith, politicians like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, who are funding the genocide, who are attacking working people. We need to break that, and we need fighting leadership in all of these organizations. We need mass working class organizations to build this movement and organize the masses.
Comrade Dust, do you have any final question for our guest?
No, I'm just really inspired. I can't. It's hard to imagine in North Carolina where the farthest left you get is those corporate Democrats, or like the leader of the NAACP is best friends with the sheriff, and just the treatment of undocumented immigrants and the ICE raids that have been happening, and then even within the immigrant community, they attack the protesters in LA out of ignorance, not only out of ignorance, but out of survival. I don't want my business to be attacked and extorted by the cops if I don't say this or do that. And I just think it's inspiring what you guys are doing over there in Seattle. And I'd love to see the minimum wage get above $7.25. But I think I just add that what you're saying really goes into, my studying of Marxism, that everything we got, we won. Nothing was given to us.
Damn right.
And
damn fucking
everything
right,
is class struggle. So, you can put anybody in a position and they will sell out whether they want to or not, unless they have that base and that power built to do something about it. And thank you so much for your work. And I recommend folks get on that website and check it out. I know I'm going to.
Yeah.